Good evening, everybody. It's so nice to see so many people on our February Power Hour. My name is Lisa Marshall. I use she, her pronouns. I am the Director of Organizing and Advocacy at New Yorkers for Clean Power. And this is the Renewable Heat Now February grassroots meeting, our monthly Power Hour. If you just joined us, please introduce yourself in the chat, your name, pronouns, your location in the state where you're zooming in from, and please share with us your favorite kind of soup. It has been such a cold and uh, miserable winter. For me, soup is one of the things that makes it bearable. And so I'm always love to see what kind of soup people like. So we'll keep letting people in. We have a packed agenda, so we'll also just keep going with the slides. Next slide, please. So tonight's agenda, we have a great program for you. We are going to get to meet the new assembly sponsor for the New York Heat Act, that is Joanne Simon. We are going to have a little bit of a deep dive on the New York Heat Act. We haven't done this for a while, and we have some new information that we think will be really interesting and relevant for all of you as we advocate to win this bill this year. We're also going to talk about what's new in the New York Heat Act. The reintroduced bill for 2025 is more streamlined, has some updates and clarifications that I think it'll be good for you all to know about. We have with us a special guest from Pythia Public who's going to give us a little coaching on how to talk about New York Heat and use the most persuasive talking points. Then we're going to take action together and prepare for our next mobilization to Albany in March. Next slide, please. So Renewable Heat Now is the campaign that is behind the grassroots side of pushing the New York Heat Act. We are a campaign made up of 25 or so organizations working around the state. We have grassroots organizations, we have policy organizations, we have partners in the heat pump business, and people bringing different perspectives. Whoops. The slides are going crazy. And our campaign is really dynamic, has a lot of diversity across the state, different points of view, different ways of working on the same goals, which are to transition our buildings in a managed and affordable way off of fossil fuel combustion for our heating and appliances and to heat pumps and energy efficient electric technologies. So next slide, please. So why do we work on buildings? We work on buildings because they are the biggest source of greenhouse gas emissions in New York. Another reason that we work on buildings is when we make our buildings more efficient and take them off of fossil fuel combustion, we really are actually creating better, safer homes for the people who live in those buildings. So it isn't just something that is good for some future generations and climate, which I know everyone on this call really cares about, but it's also something that really benefits people in this moment, makes their indoor air quality healthier, makes their home safer. When you have those energy efficiency upgrades, your bills can go down, sometimes quite dramatically. So there's a lot of reasons to work on buildings, and it's one reason most of us at Renewable Heat Now are so passionate about this campaign and about winning important policy bills like the New York Heat Act. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm very excited to introduce all of you to the new New York Heat sponsor. This bill was sponsored in the Assembly from its first introduction under another name and through the end of last year by Assemblymember Pat Fahey from Albany. And Assemblymember Fahey is now a senator. She ran for an open Senate seat in New York State. And so the bill got reassigned, and we were really delighted to find out that it was assigned to Assemblymember Joanne Simon of Brooklyn, who has been an incredible advocate for the New York Heat Act and is just a wonderful person to work with. And I wonder if the Assemblywoman is on the call. Are you here, Assemblywoman Simon?
I don't see her name, but I don't know if maybe she logged in under another name.
Assemblywoman Simon, if you are here, please raise your hand or unmute yourself and say hello. All right. Um,
We'll circle back.
we will circle back. Let's move on. So, the New York Heat Act is our keynote piece of legislation that we've been trying to pass. We've worked on many successful campaigns, including the All Electric Building Act, the Codes and Standards Bill, the Geothermal Tax Credit. We've worked in the regulatory and continue to work in the regulatory area, moving policy through the Public Service Commission. But our sort of cornerstone bill is the New York Heat Act. This is a fundamental bill to align the way we deliver energy services to New York with our climate law and to begin a planning process to transition off of the gas system in New York for cleaner heat and lower bills for all New Yorkers. So, we're going to do a little bit of a deeper dive into this bill today. And with the next slide, I'll walk you through it. Okay. New York Heat Act, which stands for Home Energy Affordable Transition Act. Why do we need it and what does it do? Next slide. Okay. Anybody in New York who heats with gas may have noticed that your gas bills are on the rise. They are going up. This on the left, you can see, is the average monthly bill for a Con Ed customer um, in New York, and this is a pretty dramatic shift in only a few years. Um, this is not just in Con Ed territory, however, it's all around the state. If you go to the next slide, you can see that here's some other utility territories and how the bills are going up. KEDNY is National Grid in New York City. KEDLI is National Grid on Long Island. Central Hudson's bills are going up. National Fuel Gas is going up quite dramatically with a big rate hike. Well, why is this happening? Why are the gas bills going up so much? Next slide. The price of gas is actually pretty low right now. The actual cost of the gas commodity. This is a graph showing gas price fluctuations over time. And you can see that it's actually over time gone mostly down. And so that is the cost of actually the gas itself is not what's driving the increase on your bill. Next slide. So let's take a look at a bill. This is a Con Ed bill, but it's basically similar for any gas bill in the state. And you can look at your own bill and see what's happening. So there's two big sections on your bill of what you're paying. The gas supply, that's the cost of the actual gas. And by the way, the utility company is legally not allowed to make money off of the gas itself. That's not how they make their money. The gas delivery cost is what is going up and up. And that is basically your share of the cost of expanding and maintaining this entire network of gas system that takes the gas and delivers it to everybody's house. And that part is going up, and it's projected to continue going up, and with more and more billions of dollars of spending as each of these utility companies dig up streets, take out old pipes, put new pipes in, and upgrade all of the gas system infrastructure that moves the gas through those pipes. So if you look at this bill, this is the current rate for a gas customer. This customer is using about $60 of gas in the month of this bill. But the delivery cost is $184, a lot more than the cost of the actual gas itself. And with the new proposed rate hike, that delivery cost would go up 25% to $231. And this is the cost that is going to continue to increase and go up more and more unless there is some kind of a system put in place that allows us to begin to transfer off this expensive gas system. And this is what is driving those rate increases. And this is literally, although we love to blame the utilities and they are not good actors in many ways, in a way, it's partly not their fault because our state law says the utilities have to supply gas. It doesn't say they have to supply essential energy services. It says gas explicitly. So they are making all their plans to continue to build this gas system and to charge us a lot of money for it. And they want to keep doing that because that is how they make their money. Remember I said they can't make money off of the actual cost of the gas itself? The way they make money for their shareholders is on the infrastructure they build. So the more infrastructure they build, the more profit they can make for their shareholders, and that we all have to pay that. And this is uh, what we really need to start to move away from, and one of the key reasons why we have been advocating for the New York Heat Act. Okay, next slide. Worse still, um, these increases are painful for some, but for others, it's really untenable. We have an energy affordability crisis in this state that is impacting about 1 in 7 households in New York who are more than 2 months behind on paying their energy bills. And by the way, when households are behind on paying their energy bills, that actually costs all ratepayers, all households money because it's extremely expensive for the utilities to um, collect on those arrears. And I think you're going to hear more about that later in this presentation. So this crisis is impacting more than 1.2 million families. They owe more than $1.3 billion to utilities. And these are the families that are hurting most. These are the families that are having trouble paying rent, paying for groceries and medicine, and often live in inadequately heated buildings, inadequately insulated buildings. The whole situation is just really bad and extremely unfair. And this burden is falling very heavily on the people who can least afford to pay and have benefited the least from this whole um, mixed up energy system. So let's see now, is Assemblymember Simon in the house? Because we could take this moment to unshare the slides and welcome our lead sponsor um, to address us and to meet all of the folks on this call. So let's unshare the slides and say hello to our friend and NY Heat sponsor, Joanne Simon. Welcome, Assembly Member.
Hi, how are you? Good to see you all this evening. Thank you so much. I apologize for being late. I had trouble connecting up. Do not ask. It's a Zoom thing. So I apologize. Anyway, I'm a little lopsided here. Okay, anyway. So thank you all for coming. It's really great to see you all here tonight. It's great to see how dedicated and what incredible work that you've been doing, because I know you've been doing it for a long time. And some of you may be newer to it than others, but this effort has really been a multi-year effort. And so I'm just really excited and honored to be able to sponsor this legislation this year. Now that the prior sponsor, Pat Fahey, has moved to the Senate. So I'm still in the sort of a learning curve in terms of what was happening behind the scenes kind of thing, and working very hard to ensure that we have support. We have a lot of co-sponsors. HEAT has a lot of support, as you know, but we need to address those persnickety issues. I think we've made some real progress in that direction, but I'm really hoping to be able to get this passed in the budget, right? And that's because we need, right? We need clean energy. It needs to be affordable and it needs to be healthy. And, you know, our climate isn't getting cooler. And this year it's going to be a tough year in the budget since we have no idea what might be happening at the federal level, but all the more reason that we should be saving New Yorkers money. You know, this actually is not going to be a big budget cost. It's mostly going to be saving, New Yorkers money. And as the governor has said, affordability is the crisis, and everything we can do to make New York more affordable and to make people's energy more affordable, we should be doing. And ultimately, we will end up saving everybody money and saving the state budget money. So I'm really looking forward to digging my teeth into this and getting this passed. And I'm really looking forward to working with all of you to make that happen. I know I was yawning earlier too, Nancy.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember Simon. We are so thrilled to have you. As you can see, there's over 100 advocates on this call tonight and almost 200 that registered. So they would get the recording. They're from all, I don't know if you want to see, if you can see in the chat, they're from all over New York State. They also shared their favorite soups. I don't know if you have a favorite soup that you want to share with us, but we're really excited to work with your office to get this done.
I'm pretty boring in the soup department. I would say tomato soup.
Tomato soup. There's nothing wrong with tomato soup. It's the best. Okay. Hopefully with grilled cheese. So
Yes, that's always good.
all right. So that was a great place to pause. We're going to go now to Liz Moran from Earth Justice, who is one of our leaders on this bill and in the climate space in New York, known to many of you, and she's going to talk you through what's new in New York Heat. And Member Simon, you're very welcome to stay, and we understand you're very busy, and if you want to leave, we won't hold it against you, but we're just so grateful to you for being here tonight.
Well, thank you. I'll stay on for a little bit, and then I will have to take off to another event. But thank you.
Thank you. So where are you, Liz? Jump in.
Okay. Hi, everyone. How are you all doing? Assemblywoman, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are so excited to work with you and get this across the finish line. I hope that you're seeing in the chat all of the rounds of applause for you and how excited we are to work with you on this. So, with that said, my name is Liz Moran. I'm the New York policy advocate with Earth Justice. I am based here in the Capital Region, and it's been an honor working with so many of you and seeing a bunch of new folks join our movement in this call today. This is a year. We're going to get it done. Year after year, people's energy bills are going up. And that's unsustainable. No New Yorker, no person should have to choose between heating and eating. The reason energy bills are going up is because of the dirty and expensive gas system, period. And the NY Heat Act is the solution. And this is the year we're going to get it done, and we're going to get the Assembly support. So I'm going to take some time and break down for you the components of the NY Heat Act. Because the beauty of the NY Heat Act is every single provision of this bill is a cost savings measure. This is a consumer piece of legislation. So let me walk through how this is the case, what these provisions do. So number one, this one's pretty straightforward. We have some pretty antiquated subsidies for the fossil fuel system. Every ratepayer is currently covering the costs of hooking new people up to the gas system if they're in 100 feet of an existing line. This doesn't make sense anymore for a number of reasons. One, thankfully, the state is starting to move away for new buildings from the gas system. And ultimately, if people want to get gas, they should probably hook themselves up. So this costs ratepayers $200 million every year, at least. It actually is likely more. So, okay, let's get rid of this old subsidy that the state has started to move past for a number of reasons. Number two, it ends a gas mandate that we have under existing law. This is sometimes referred to as the obligation to serve. And what our current law says is utilities have to build upon and expand the gas system. So our current law is preferential for gas. This is super out of date. What this legislation does is it changes that mandate and makes it an all of the above energy approach in many ways, right? By getting rid of this explicit language for gas and opening up the door for cheaper and cleaner alternatives to gas, that's going to start saving people money. Because as Lisa showed earlier, it's the gas system that's costing us so much money, that's causing our bills to go up. So this is going to avoid $28 billion in future spending on new gas pipelines. And it's going to allow the state to strategically review our existing gas infrastructure. And instead of replacing a aging, leaking gas pipe, we can instead look towards a thermal energy network or heat pumps at a neighborhood scale. And that way, it's not going to have to be forced upon every homeowner to have to figure this out. We're doing this at a system-wide scale. So that's the gas mandate. And then the last piece is a very important measure. New York State has a goal, believe it or not, to ensure that households don't spend more than 6% of their income on energy bills. But unfortunately, the state hasn't been doing that much to make sure this goal is being met. The NY Heat Act says you got to figure out a way to meet this goal. And doing that is going to save the households that need that help $136 per month on average. So that's for 1 in 4 New York households. That's a lot of people that would benefit right away. But it's not just these households that would benefit. All ratepayers, all customers would save money by ensuring that people who need assistance get that assistance. And this comes back to what Lisa mentioned earlier. All ratepayers subsidize our existing energy affordability program. That's the program that's designed to help people make sure they don't pay more than 6% of their income on bills. And we also subsidize when people get into debt. So when people can't afford to pay their bills, ultimately, that's also being subsidized by regular customers. So by making sure that people can actually afford their energy bills, that's going to save all ratepayers money. So those are the 3 main components of the NY Heat Act. And if we go to the next slide, I will walk you through the new bill and how this makes that process really clear. So here you have the basic details. We've got our new assembly sponsor, we have a new bill number, and the NY Heat Act that's been introduced for 2025 is a much clearer piece of legislation. We strongly believed that the legislation last year would accomplish exactly what the new bill does. So nothing's changing in what this is accomplishing, but this does make the legislation much more straightforward and answer some common questions as you as advocates might get from lawmakers. Take, for example, consumer guardrails. The NY Heat Act will allow utilities to review their gas infrastructure and propose neighborhoods and infrastructure that might not make sense to replace anymore. It might not be cost effective to replace one gas line with another gas line. It might be more cost effective to replace that line with, like I said, a thermal energy network or heat pumps as some examples. So when that review takes place and a proposal happens, we now make sure that there's a clear process for how the public is engaged and that nothing comes by surprise. So that's one really important piece. The other important piece is it ensures that people have continued access to safe and reliable energy services for heating, cooling, cooking, and water. People aren't going to lose this service. NY Heat guarantees that, And because it still guarantees that, if a neighborhood is selected for a new alternative to gas, people in that neighborhood are going to be covered. It's going to make sure that utilities are providing technical support and funding for the installation of customer-owned equipment at low to no cost. So that's made very clear in the bill, along with improved labor provisions and much more. We've gotten a lot of lawmakers that have asked, how is this going to work? The beauty of the new bill is you can point exactly to the legislation that talks about how this is going to work. So next slide, please. So, okay, this is the question that keeps coming up as well. You're going to hear some scary numbers potentially. You're going to hear, oh my gosh, it can cost up to $60,000 to put heat pumps into somebody's home. People can't afford that. The beauty of the NY Heat Act is this is not going to be upon every homeowner to have to figure out. As I mentioned before, NY Heat guarantees that people have access to safe and reliable energy services. That doesn't change. What does change is the fact that that safe and reliable energy service doesn't have to be gas anymore. So the utility is still going to have a legal obligation to make sure their customers have these services. That means the money that gets freed up by not replacing a gas line is instead going to go towards retrofitting people's homes, installing heat pumps, or installing a thermal energy network. We've seen this take place in small case examples, but NY Heat will allow this to happen at a larger scale for more people. This isn't going to be funded by people's taxes. This is taking money that already is being spent by ratepayers and just changing how that money is being spent in a much more cost-effective way that's going to save everybody money over time. Because as we've been saying, old, antiquated, failing gas infrastructure is just costing us too much money. Why are we paying for an old system that we need to move away from? So yeah, and then gas infrastructure is so expensive that it's often cost competitive to electrify people's homes and neighborhoods. So this is not going to raise costs for people due to a switch. It's not going to cost a homeowner $60K. So hopefully these points can help you if you get that question. And let's go to the next slide. Okay, so how are we going to do this? You've got some talking points about the bill. We'll make sure to provide you with some materials to help you when you talk about it. Where are we? So we're in the middle of the state's legislative session, and as the Assemblywoman said, we want to get this done in the state budget process. So right now, the governor has put out her executive budget proposal back in January. The Assembly and the Senate are going to put out their own versions of the budget. So they're going to put their cards on the table for what they want to see. And that's going to happen sometime in early to mid-March. That's going to be a key moment for us. We're hopeful that the Assembly and the Senate both include the NY Heat Act in their one-house budget proposals. So everything we've been doing to this point is to really put pressure on the Assembly. The Senate has been a strong ally. The Senate has included the NY Heat Act in several budgets. They've passed it as a standalone bill. And we are counting their continued support. We're really looking towards the Assembly to step up at this point. So once those one-house budgets are out, our work is not done. We have to make sure that the NY Heat Act ends up in the final budget. Under the law, the state budget is due by April 1st. That doesn't mean that it's not always late. Sometimes it's late. So we're going to try to push for this to be in the final budget, whether it's actually on April 1st or sometime after. If we don't get it in the budget, legislative session carries on until mid-June. So if it's not in the budget, we still have a chance to get NY Heat across the finish line. And we're going to keep that work going until this bill is passed. Next slide. Okay, so we've made a lot of progress as a movement. You can see leading up to present, there's a lot that we've done. We had a phenomenal action in Albany in February, over 300 people talking to lawmakers, rallying in the state capitol, and we engaged during the budget hearing process, and so much more. So now, one House budgets are being shaped. It's going to be important for us to continue in-district lobbying. And then March, it's going to be go time. No matter what ends up happening with the one House budgets, we're going to have to make sure we push as hard as possible to get NY Heat in the final budget. So we're going to keep a close eye out for what those one House budgets look like. We're going to do what we can to influence budget negotiations. And a key piece to this is coming to Albany on March 19th, making sure lawmakers hear what you have to say about addressing the skyrocketing costs of energy bills. So I hope to see you all there, and I believe I'm passing on the next slide to our next speaker.
That's right. We're going to go to Marissa Solomon now from Pythia Public. I did make Marissa. Oh, there she is. Okay. Let's take the slide.
Hi, I'm Marissa Solomon, as Lisa said. My favorite soup is veggie chili, if that counts as soup. And I am a director at Pythia Public. I've been working on the New York Heat Act with Lisa and Liz and many of you for 3 years now. And I have talked about the New York Heat Act a lot to reporters, to the public, to partners, and I'm excited to talk with you all about how to talk about it. As has been mentioned many times tonight, including by Assemblymember Simon, there is an affordability crisis in New York. It's all we hear about. Many of us feel it deeply, and at home and in our wallets. And it is what the legislature has said is their #1 priority to address this year. And the New York Heat Act is the perfect way to address it, because the New York Heat Act will save people money every single month in their bills that they have to pay. Not only, have bills already been high, many of us have, struggled to pay our bills for a long time, but rate hikes are slamming New Yorkers across the state. They continue to go up. Con Ed in New York City and Westchester is now asking if they can raise the average bill by $50 next year. It's ridiculous. We can't afford it. Our bills are already too high. And so when we talk about the New York Heat Act, we want to keep pointing to these issues because, if affordability is the #1 priority for the legislature, the New York Heat Act will address it. And we can talk about the ways that people's bills are going up and up and up when we have a solution that will let them go down. So yes, we talk about the rate hikes, and an important point to talk about with these rate hikes, this was mentioned already tonight too. Our bills aren't going up because gas is becoming more expensive. Gas is actually becoming cheaper. Utilities just want us to cover their operating costs, the infrastructure, and they want us to pay more money so they can enrich their shareholders. That's not what we should be doing. The utilities should be doing everything they can to reduce our bills, and that's what the New York Heat Act makes possible. Next slide. So I mentioned New York Heat Act will curb these rate hikes. There's a lot of you are involved in advocacy around rate hikes in your areas, and that's really important, and we want to do that. But wouldn't it be great if there was a bill that made it so we didn't have as many of these rate hikes, and so we didn't just have to keep fighting rate hike after rate hike? That's what the New York Heat Act does. It will curb the rate hikes overall, so we're not playing whack-a-mole every time a different utility wants to price gouge. And as Liz mentioned before, it will save the families who need it most $136 every single month on their bills. It is really, really helpful when you're talking about New York Heat to point to these specific numbers and specific savings. We can say something saves money, but when you say the exact amount that the average family will save with the New York Heat Act, that makes it real. That can tell you, $136, that's a big portion of a lot of people's rent, or that's a family's, a week of groceries or medication. When you can make it as real as possible, you're painting a picture, and that makes it really tangible for people. So 1 in 4 families can't pay their energy bills, and those families would save $136 every single month on average. And then when we talk about the obligation to serve, that's a gas mandate. The obligation to serve keeps us locked into the dirty, expensive, outdated gas system. And it's essentially a mandate that keeps us stuck on gas when, if National Grid, for example, surveys a street and says we want to switch to ground source or to geothermal or to heat pumps. But one family says I'd rather stay on gas because of the gas mandate or the obligation to serve, then that means that entire block is stuck. So by taking the wonky term obligation to serve and calling it the gas mandate, that really tells you exactly what it is. It keeps us stuck on gas. It is a gas mandate. But the New York Heat Act is our ticket out.
Thank you, Marissa, so much. We've given you guys a lot of information, and now we're going to move on to help you take this information and move it into action. I'm going to share also the Renewable Heat Now messaging guide with you guys that has some of these points in it. It's not always immediately brought up to date, but it's something we've been working on that helps you think about how to talk about this bill in a persuasive and factual way. So let's turn it over now to Andra Lehmanis from Alliance for Green Economy, and she's going to walk us through the action taking for this evening. And let's go to the next slide. Okay.
All right, everybody, take a deep breath because we've got several items on the action list for tonight. So first, Lisa is going to put links into the chat for looking up your assembly member and senator, because we want to get individualized letters from constituents into our legislators' offices. And we hope that when you look them up, and you also will look up their email addresses, you can start an email to your assembly member. Just open up an email, pop in their email address, and subject line, put the New York Heat Act in the one house budget. And then hopefully you can use some of the talking points that you've heard tonight and tell your story of why the New York Heat Act is important for your family, your neighborhood, your region, why it needs to pass in the budget this year. And we're only writing to our Democratic Assembly members and senators. The Assembly is a priority right now, but the Senate is also lovely. If you can write a letter to your Assembly member and then rework it and send it to your senator, that's beautiful. You get bonus points. So we're trying to get the Assembly members to all be thinking of New York Heat, first and foremost, in the front of their minds as they go back to Albany in March. So please do try to write an email. Start your email now. And I will start mine now too. So we're going to take some time to open up that email, pop in the Assembly member's email, put in the subject line, and jot down a few thoughts about the letter that you're going to be doing tomorrow.
When you use the assembly, if you don't already know your assembly person's name and their email, when you use the lookup link in the chat, you can it'll take you to their page, and then under contact on their page, you'll find their email address and sometimes a contact form as well. So we're going to give you all a few minutes to get that started. I'm going to also put the messaging guide into the chat again, or I put it before. But you really want to tell them about these gas rate hikes. You don't want to keep paying more and more money on your bill every month for a system that is antiquated and is against our state climate law. We don't want to keep investing in this outdated system. And tell them, if you're in Con Ed, say, I'm pretty upset about that rate hike that was just announced last week. I've heard you can do something about it by passing New York Heat this year. Make it personal. We have a link that sends a generic email, but a personal email is going to be even more impactful. All right.
If you don't have a Democrat as a legislator, you could reach out to some of your friends who are in Democratic districts and help them work through a letter to their legislator. Or you could just go to our link tree and send one of the generic letters.
I'm going to put the link tree in the chat. So, Andra, we got a question from Cliff. If your member is already a supporter of the New York Heat Act, should you bother writing them a letter?
Yes, they need all the reminders they can get. Your letter would probably be their inspiration to speak up for it in a meeting or to feel more confident looking up information about it.
Yeah, it's actually most important to bother the members who are supportive of the bill, because it's them that has to speak up to the leadership to advocate for it next week when they come back from session. They're the ones who are going to speak up. If no one speaks up, it's not going to get in the budget. So it's actually the most important thing to bug the co-sponsors and the supporters to make sure that they hear from you over and over again, because that is going to cut through the noise and make sure that when it's brought up by the leadership, that that they're going to speak up.
This is super true. We're sometimes focused on how many co-sponsors do we have and did we get a new co-sponsor? But what we want is the active and vocal co-sponsors. The silent co-sponsors are just sort of like, maybe they got on that bill just so that we would stop bothering them, right? But that's not what's going to happen. We're going to keep reaching out.
Okay, so when you've found your member, you found their email, and you've started that email, you don't need to finish writing it now. Just maybe type done in the chat, and we'll see how we're getting on. Then we can move on.
All right, I'm seeing some folks are typing done into the chat. You can find a stopping point in your drafting of your letter. Then I think we're ready to proceed to the next slide.
Oh, Andra, on the last slide, do we want to ask them to do one more thing tomorrow?
Oh, sure. When you finish your letter and you have emailed it to your legislator, it would be a great idea for you to pick up the phone and call their district office and just tell them to put the New York Heat Act in the One House budget. Tell them you support the New York Heat Act and you want them to be openly and vocally supporting it as well. And then you could also maybe take a picture of part of your letter or a picture of a New York Heat sign or a picture of your Renewable Heat Now shirt on your family member and post it on social media and tag your legislator also. And we have the legislator social media handles in a spreadsheet, right, Lisa? Perfect.
Yes, we have this spreadsheet, which I'm going to share now. It's just the assembly Dems because they're the ones we need to pressure the most. So you can find their email handles and tag them. Remember that there's two kinds of pressure: the sort of private kind where you email them or talk to them in a closed office, and the public kind where you pressure them publicly. And the public kind is even more impactful. Okay, now I think we can go to the next slide. Sorry, I interrupted.
That's all right. I love co-hosting like this. So next slide, please. All right, see, we're focusing on the assembly. This week, we had a really successful assembly office drop-in effort going. We're continuing it through next week. And we have on this call a specialist in doing assembly district office drop-ins. Delia, would you like to tell us about your experience?
Sure. I'm telling this secondhand. I didn't go to this meeting, but I am reporting back from my friend Nikki, who is a volunteer with Climate Families NYC and 350 Brooklyn. She dropped in to Harvey Epstein's office with her kids and with a few other constituents and activists. And the woman in the red scarf is 96 years old. So there's so many generations of people in this picture who are excited to pass New York Heat. They met up at her name is Betty Jones. And Nikki said, I want to be like Betty Jones when I grow up. And I agree with Nikki on that. I would also like to be like Betty Jones. They walked over from Betty's apartment to Assemblymember Harvey Epstein's office and dropped in and said hi. Assemblymember Epstein wasn't there, but they talked to a staffer named Jackson, who was already familiar with New York Heat and was excited about it and said that Assemblymember Epstein is excited to pass it in the budget. Nikki kind of reiterated how important that is, how that's the really important ask right now. And they brought the sign for New York Heat, which Nikki said she was planning on taking home, but that Jackson decided they wanted to keep it and they put it in the window. So they wanted to proclaim their support for New York Heat to anyone who walks by.
I love that. Thank you so much. And so see, it's not really that difficult, right? We have a spreadsheet. You can find your assembly member on the sheet and sign up to go visit them. If somebody else has already visited them, that's okay. More is better. More is always better than less. And you can print out the New York Heat one-pager, which Lisa already shared a link to, or you can always find it in our link tree. And if you have a sign with you, or you can make a sign, or you can print out a sign, you can bring that along. Invite a few friends, and it doesn't have to take long, right? You just go to the door, you walk in and say, hi, we're constituents, and we'd like to speak to the assembly member about the New York Heat Act. And perhaps you get someone, if the assembly member is not there, as wonderful as Jackson, who is excited to talk to you about the New York Heat Act. And then the second step is always get the photo and post it on social media. And then you can get a link to that and put it into that chart where you signed, into the sheet where you signed up to make that visit. And that's how I found this photo of the Climate Families NYC visit earlier today. So hope that we'll keep that effort going next week. It's a lot of fun. It involves new people, and it brings a sort of fresh kind of energy to our assembly members' district offices. Okay, I think I'm ready for the next slide. Oh, great. So tomorrow there's going to be a press conference at 12:30 in the afternoon. It's going to be at the Con Ed building near Union Square. And a number of legislators have committed to being there, and they will be talking about how the New York Heat Act can curb rate hikes, such as the big one that Con Ed just proposed. So if you're in the area and available, please stop by. We would like to add to the crowd of support. Next slide.
Sorry, I'm not sure what's happening with.
Okay, well, so the previous slide was a collage of photos from our February 4th trip to Albany. And Lisa can pop the link to the gallery that these photos were pulled from into the chat, and you can all look at them. I wanted to celebrate all of you for being in Albany and for taking the time to go there. We had such a successful run. We had 350 advocates who came. We filled the $1 million staircase all the way to the top. And we had 29 legislators quoted in the press release that went out that day about our trip to Albany. We made contact with 150 legislators, either with lobby visits or drop-ins or off-the-floor lobbying. We had 250 photos uploaded to the site that Lisa is sharing. And we had 200 packs of I'm Sticking with the New York Heat Act chewing gum shared with legislators. Then, this slide is great now. Then the following week, we showed up in Albany for New York Heat again. And this was a smaller group, right? It was about 24 people who came, and we took around the one-pagers to the offices and did some off-the-floor lobbying. But it was like bringing up New York Heat again to all the legislators, making it in the front of their minds, asking them to put it in the budget. And we started delivering our champion posters for 2025. And so the legislators are always really happy to get these. Some of them have been demanding theirs, and we haven't gotten around to it yet, but it's a very positive thing. And then, as Harvey Epstein did with the past New York Heat sign, legislators usually display these outside their office door or someplace in their office, and they do it with pride, and it's something that we love to do every year. Next slide. Okay, and we're going back to Albany on Wednesday, March 19th. And we hope that our 350 allies from last time and all of your friends will join us. So please register for the Rally and Advocacy Day at the link that Lisa is going to put into the chat, and share that with your friends. You have about a month of advance notice so that you can plan to be there. It's always a really good time. It's like a family reunion for environmental advocates, right? We will have buses and supplies and lunches and literature for drop-offs and fun surprises. Like, remember last year's lollipops, Don't Suck Past New York Heat, and that the chewing gum, I'm Sticking with the New York Heat Act that we had? We'll think of more things like that. We're going to be bold and visible and radiate positive energy to power the New York Heat Act through the budget process and into the budget. So here's just your first look at the schedule. It's going to be a little bit different sort of an advocacy day because we won't have formal half-hour lobby visits in offices. We want to be out there and be more visible and have like contact with all the legislators. And so we'll have informal drop-ins and off-the-floor lobbying. And then we'll do the ever popular line the hall in the breezeway to greet our legislators as they're walking through. And with our smiles and positive energy, we'll encourage them to pass the New York Heat Act in the budget and get photos of ourselves with them, and it'll be wonderful. So it'll be the same type of 10:30 to 11 o'clock arrival time. We're going to be in the food court off the concourse again. That space worked really well for the size crowd that we have. We'll be setting up, even though you're not going to be lobbying in the offices with a team, we're still going to set up teams so that during the whole day you have a group that you're checking in with and traveling with to all these different places, and you can keep each other informed and you can keep each other hydrated and safe. And then we're going to rally on the $1 million staircase. In the afternoon, we'll do the office drop-ins and off-the-floor lobbying, and we'll end the day with the line the halls action and get you back to your buses in time to get home. Next slide, please. Oh, this slide is to remind you about the next Power Hour. The March 13th Power Hour is going to be the week before we go back to Albany for the big mobilization, and we'll be sharing the latest updates, and we'll play around of Name That Legislator, and you should register now so that you make sure to save that date. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is your to-do list for the upcoming month. you're going to finish your email to your legislator, send it, make that call, and or do the social media post about it. Then you're going to consider who you want to invite with you to do a legislator drop-in visit next week. If you're in New York City, you can attend the New York City Con Ed presser tomorrow at 12:30. And if you're not anywhere near New York City, you can sign up to do phone banking with Food and Water Watch. This is the easiest, most fun phone banking that you will ever do. It's perfect for introverts like me. You will be calling people who signed up to go to Albany with us in February and inviting them to come back and join us in March. And Lisa will pop a link to that into the chat, how to sign up for the phone banking. And then finally, make sure that you're signed up for the March 13th Power Hour and the March 19th Albany mobilization. And that's all I have for you. Is that enough?
It is right on time, Andra. Thank you so much. Let's go to the final slide. It is just 7:59, so we got through all of that. I couldn't be more grateful to all of the presenters tonight, the great engagement in the chat. I don't know why that photo doesn't show up. How weird.
It's your collage. I'm so sad about that. It's beautiful.
Very sad. Let's unshare the slides and say goodbye. All of the signups, the Albany mobilization, the February office visit action, the March Power Hour, the March mobilization, the phone banking with Food and Water Watch every Wednesday, the one pager for the New York Heat Act, everything you need at your fingertips, how to send a quick email to your legislators, all in that link tree. You can bookmark that link tree. Also, if you're on Instagram, you can always find that link tree in our bio on Instagram. So it's a good link. We try to keep that up to date. So thanks everybody. I can't believe we got through all of that in 1 hour. Really appreciate all of you. I think it was really meaningful for Assemblymember Simon to see how many advocates there are for this bill and how much enthusiasm from all across New York State. So thanks so much. Please send those emails and make those calls tomorrow. Drop by your assembly member's office and share a post with us about it, and have a wonderful evening and a great weekend. When you eat soup, think of us, think of New York Heat and how we're going to pass it this year, and it's going to feel so good, just like a nice bowl of soup.